I have to believe, for whatever reasons, that these people were able to rationalize that what they were doing. If there is any truth in what we're saying, they have to be able to rationalize to themselves that what they're doing is for an honest purpose.
People say Hollywood is built on dreams, but those very dreams have buried truths no one dares to mention. Recently, in a leaked diary, Burt Lancaster, the post-war American emblem of masculinity, left a line that shook the industry. When a person holds too much money and power, he gradually loses his humanity. At first, many assumed it was just the philosophical sigh of an aging star. But as more pages turned, readers were stunned to find a list of names once worshipped worldwide. Yet in Lancaster's eyes, they were merely those who sold their souls for the spotlight. According to those notes, there was a legend who leveraged adoration to pursue and pressure very young girls into marrying him. A platinum-haired icon whose husband and companion passed away under mysterious circumstances, leaving her the entirety of their estates, and a music genius who outraged America by publicly marrying his 13-year-old cousin. In today's video, we'll open that forbidden diary, the roll call of the most troubling figures of Hollywood's golden age. And trust me, the last name will make you question how anyone could act that heartless. Errol Flynn, a cascade of morality scandals that rocked America. Errol Flynn rode like the wind, flashed a blade like lightning, and smiled as if the world were his private stage. The Adventures of Robin Hood, 1938, made him a symbol of freedom in the 1930s. At his Mulholland Drive estate, 4 night parties turned him into another kind of legend. In 1942, 2 young women, Peggy Satterlee and Betty Hansen, filed claims in Los Angeles, saying Flynn had invited them to Catalina for publicity photos, a trip that became a memory they wished they could forget. The press dubbed it the scandal of the century. Each morning, Flynn appeared in court in a flawless white suit, hair slicked, eyes half mocking, half defiant. An all-male jury returned a not guilty verdict after only a few hours of deliberation. Leaving court, his answer to reporters went straight into the public's bad books. From that day, good old boy became the charm of a star who knew the angles. Hollywood went stone silent. Warner Brothers rushed Gentleman Jim into theaters with a thunderous campaign, recasting Flynn as the hero who doesn't fall. The New York Daily News ran a feature on Mulholland gatherings, calling the house a place where the lights almost never go out and standards almost never go on. Neighbors frequently called police over crashes in the night and booming laughter after arguments. On the Sunset Strip, Flynn moved like a hot gust of wind, leaving behind whispers no one dared print. His career continued, but the outlaw hero image began to cling like a studio-mixed brand. In 1959, Flynn died suddenly in Vancouver at just 50. Canadian police records noted a mid-range hotel room, an unfinished bottle, and an old photo of him smiling. That ending looked like a final poster, a courteous grin covering a string of quiet, unheralded nights. And the story turns to another face, someone who didn't hide wrongdoing, but used it like a logo to sell tickets. Robert Mitchum, the man who turned a bad image into a $1 million brand. Robert Mitchum had the face of film noir, distant eyes, a slight curl of the lip, a walk that said the outside world barely mattered. He never needed to explain why he felt dangerous. His look did the work. On the night of August 31st, 1948, Beverly Hills police entered a house on Ridpath Drive. Reports mentioned a thick haze and a group relaxing amid laughter. Mitchum was led out under a barrage of flashes. The Los Angeles Times ran a handcuffed photo on the next morning's front page. What chilled Hollywood was his faint smile, as if screen testing for the police camera. Life described Mitchum's booking images as the strangest of records because they look like studio stills. The sentence put him away for 43 days. Stepping outside, swarmed by reporters, Mitchum tossed off a few airy words that Hollywood now had a real bad guy. The public bristled, but RKO immediately sent a fresh contract. Publicists turned the hot headlines into props, slotting him into cool, unbothered leads in Out of the Past and Crossfire, plastering posters with playful lines about freedom and rebellion. His unpredictability fed the legend. Mitchum once walked off a live NBC interview because the host asked if he was a role model for youth. He brushed aside a photographer's arm after relentless flashes and sometimes tilted his head, squinting at the lens as if to pour fuel on the fire. The press wrote that Mitchum had tailored wrongdoing into a made-to-measure coat, a realism the prim and proper could never buy. Beyond the golden age, the next name wasn't a nightly lead, but a woman who forced the system to rewrite its rulebook because it didn't know where to file her. Mae West, the star who forced Hollywood to write rules to contain her boldness.
Well, when I'm good, I'm very good. But when I'm bad, I'm better.
I see a man in your life.
Before Marilyn Monroe turned a smile into a spell, America had Mae West, low, velvety voice, eyes like embers in a dark room. On Broadway, she didn't just perform, she challenged public manners with lines that made audiences blush, then laugh at hearing what no one dared say out loud. In 1926, during Sex, written by and starring Mae, New York police swept backstage on West 48th Street. The trial ended with a 10-day sentence at Jefferson Market Jail for offending public standards. But when the door opened, she walked straight to the New York Evening Graphic press pack, adjusted her feathered hat, and declared a line for the ages. "I've just acquired new research for a character." The media impact was instant. Mae West lit the entertainment map in bright red. Hollywood tried to soften her for the contract, but in 1933, within months, She Done Him Wrong and I'm No Angel swept the box office. Crowds wrapped around Paramount Theaters on 7th Avenue, embarrassed yet unable to look away. The New Yorker wrote, "She isn't merely alluring, she's a seismic event." Faith groups flooded the production office with petitions, and conservative states threatened to pull permits. The result? In 1934, the Hays Code was strictly enforced. Dense rules about wardrobe, dialogue, and suggestion aimed squarely at bottling the energy Mae poured onto the screen. But the code only made her show trickier. On NBC Radio in 1937, when asked, "Do you think you're a bad influence?" Mae tilted her head and said calmly, "I don't make anyone worse. I just make them more honest." Variety quoted her verbatim, and the Los Angeles Times blared, "Mae West turned standards into props." Behind the scenes, Paramount set up an internal review team solely to read her lines before each shoot. Mae West didn't just test morals, she exposed performative propriety. When a woman insisted on her own language, the system had to put up new fences. From that fence, Hollywood peered at a bigger crack, where a hotel party dragged a silent-era empire into the abyss. Fatty Arbuckle, the comedy star destroyed by a hotel scandal that shook Hollywood history. Before Chaplin became legend, America adored Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle, a man who could make a theater erupt with a single raised eyebrow. His name soared so high Paramount paid record fees. Theaters in San Francisco, Chicago, and New York hung sold-out signs with each new release. September 5, 1921, St. Francis Hotel, San Francisco, room 1219. A party began like so many of the decade. Among the crowd, Virginia Rappy, 26, a familiar face in photo spreads known as the girl in the pearl dress. By the next afternoon, she collapsed in severe pain. Friends scrambled for the hotel doctor, then rushed her to Wakefield Hospital. 3 days of rumor and uproar later, Virginia died, and the San Francisco Examiner thundered, comedy idol and a mysterious death in a luxury hotel. Public fury exploded. A friend of Virginia's, Maud Delmont, told investigators she'd heard cries for help. Physical evidence didn't match the story, but that testimony made Roscoe the target of national outrage. He was arrested while his film still played. A special Los Angeles Times edition gasped, "From million-dollar idol to monster in 24 hours." 3 trials from late 1921 to early 1922 unfolded under a media storm. In the end, the jury not only acquitted him, they issued a rare written apology, stating he had been wronged. The court's final stamp couldn't reverse the public verdict. Major chains canceled showings, ad contracts vanished in days, and Roscoe's name was erased from posters as if he'd never existed. Paramount cut ties to protect the brand. The man who once made America laugh was blacklisted because the crowd could no longer laugh with him. In 1933, Arbuckle died quietly in New York, just hours after accepting an offer to return on a new project, a piercing irony for someone so close to a second chance. From room 1219 at the St. Francis, Hollywood learned a brutal lesson. Sometimes justice arrives slower than a hot headline. Once a crowd writes the story, evidence drops into the canyon. That public force would return to bury those who burned themselves, among them a keyboard firebrand named Jerry Lee Lewis. Jerry Lee Lewis, the music prodigy who shattered his own stardom by marrying his 13-year-old cousin, Jerry Lee Lewis, was born to torch the stage. His hands hit the keys like hammers, whole lot of shaking going on, and great balls of fire exploded on the 1957 charts. Billboard hailed him as a rightful heir, and fans jammed the wings just to catch a half-second of that mischievous smile. Everything soared until a May morning in 1958 at London's Heathrow. Lewis came down the steps to begin a European tour, beside him a small blonde girl. A Daily Mail reporter asked who she was. He answered simply, "My wife Myra." Minutes later, papers checked records. Myra Gale Brown was his first cousin and just 13. The news swept Britain in a day, then surged back to America. The Guardian wrote, "The halo burned up in 6 hours. Shows were canceled en masse, radio struck him from playlists, and the label froze releases. Back in the US, he hit a wall of steel. TV interviews were cut midstream after audience reactions. Nashville radio refused to spin new tracks. Instead of lying low, he pushed ahead defiantly. In time, he insisted he'd done nothing wrong, saying it was a family matter. The phrasing poured oil on the fire, turning damage control into a permanent scar." In the spark that survived, Myra recalled being swept into the whirlwind at a tender age. A house with lights always on, endless trips, the weighty role of a wife while friends still sat in classrooms. The public recoiled at the strange power of celebrity. When the shine is blinding, people can forget the guardrails meant to protect growing up. Jerry Lee's career plunged. He still toured small southern venues, pounding the keys until his hands bled to prove the flame remained. But the chart stayed cold for years. And in Hollywood's inner kitchen of power, one man turned his own missteps into a ladder, conducting the press like an orchestra and converting scandal into a commercial strategy. Robert Evans, the Paramount power player, shadowed by the Cotton Club case and backroom storms. On the power map of 1960s Hollywood, Robert Evans wasn't just a name, he was the hub. A former model turned mid-tier actor, Evans was pulled into Paramount by Charles Bluedorn in 1966 and handed the production chief's chair while the studio bled red ink. From his Melrose Avenue office, he flipped the balance sheet, betting on projects that looked risky and turned mythic. Rosemary's Baby, 1968, The Godfather, 1972, Chinatown, 1974. The box office roared and Evans's aura shot to the summit. Alongside the glow was a dimmer, noisier backdrop. His Beverly Hills home, Vanity Fair wrote, felt like a 24-hour exchange where every meeting had a price, only the goods varied. Parties rolled from pool to parlor to private screening. Drinks poured like a waterfall. Artists came and went. Gossip columns in the Los Angeles Herald, Examiner, and Variety took notes. Evans's calendar read like the industry's almanac. In 1980, Los Angeles investigators arrived at the estate and seized a notable cache of restricted substances. Photos of Evans in a white suit, head lowered, hit the front pages of the Los Angeles Times and the Washington Post. He posted bond. Lawyers threw up media barriers, but before the storm could pass, another file pulled his name deeper into the whirlpool, the Cotton Club case. In May 1983, Roy Radin, a financier tied to the Cotton Club, was found dead in the Mojave Desert. Police launched a wide inquiry. Evans's name surfaced repeatedly in interviews due to work and money around the project. He was called in several times, denied any involvement, yet the media wouldn't let the story close. Variety mused, "In Hollywood, those with the best memories tell it most profitably." On KTLA, a local commentator put it bluntly, "Whoever holds the narrative survives." Despite the fog, Evans quietly returned to filmmaking. In 1994, he published The Kid Stays in the Picture, naming names, detailing tactics, turning every blow-up into a page-turner. The polish of his voice pulled the public into his saga. Filmmakers admitted it. He didn't just make movies, he made power, then used that power to rewrite the report of his life. Those years crystallized a chilling axiom. In Hollywood, wrongdoing doesn't always end a career. It sometimes only needs a deft writer and a handsome book cover. From Evans's velvet-draped salon, the lights swing to another reigning chaos queen, someone who wielded audacity like a weapon and turned the whole town into her private stage. Tallulah Bankhead, the rebel queen who made Hollywood flinch with nerve and quiet influence. Tallulah Bankhead swept into a room like a gust carrying smoke and heavy perfume. In the 1930s, as the Hays Code began to tighten, she still lived as if rules were merely a backdrop for performance. A husky voice, platinum hair, and eyes half dazed, half defiant left everyone unsettled. The Los Angeles Herald wrote, "She arrives, and the room already feels spirited before drinks are poured." The label Queen of the Night clung to her like a brand, and her guest lists ran from A-list directors to politicians, journalists, and stars afraid their careers were sliding. Chateau Marmont on Sunset Boulevard was her preferred stage. One birthday night in 1938, amid music and clinking glasses, Bankhead hurled a drink straight into a director's face, teasing him as stiff as lumber, then laughed. "That was a scene we just wrapped. Real life always gives better feeling." No one dared react, because everyone knew one call from Tallulah could make a name vanish from the next week's casting sheets. The Hollywood Reporter recorded the tale like urban legend, while studios shook their heads yet quietly held respect. Her devil-may-care energy spilled onto set. Filming Lifeboat in 1944, Alfred Hitchcock told Variety that the hardest task wasn't staging the ocean, but coordinating a star with her own orbit. The crew remembered late entrances, razor-edged jokes aimed at director or co-stars, and occasional half-day disappearances to find inspiration. The wardrobe team told Photoplay that her dress sizes changed with her mood. Tailors had to stay on standby to update last-minute decisions. The swagger even reached politics. In 1939, at a reception in Washington, D.C., Capitol reporters recounted Tallulah lighting a cigarette in a White House drawing room. When security approached, she simply curled a smile. The Washington merry-go-round columns in the Washington Post kept the story spinning for weeks. However embellished, word of mouth swelled Bankhead's name. both a symbol of freedom and a warning about using noise to blur boundaries. At the peak of that paradox, just when people thought she had dimmed, another platinum angel appeared, lovelier, purer, but carrying a chill that made Hollywood shudder. 8. Jean Harlow, the star around whom men seemed to meet mysterious ends. On MGM sets in the 1930s, there was a kind of light the camera could never fully catch. It radiated from Jean Harlow. A youthful face, lips like fire-tinted rouge, skin so pale it reflected the lamps, prompting director Howard Hughes to exclaim, "We need a new word for that hair." And thus, Platinum Blonde was born, becoming the emblem of a generation of American glamour. Harlow entered Hollywood at 18, no acting school, no experience, but with something no class could teach: the instinct of someone who knew the world would stop for her. She rocketed with Hell's Angels, 1930, then shocked audiences with Red Dust, 1932, and Dinner at 8, 1933. Photoplay wrote, "Jean Harlow makes men forget to breathe and women forget to speak." Yet behind every laugh was a rip in the silk backstage, where MGM's glow was braced by unease. In 1932, Harlow married veteran producer Paul Byrne, 22 years her senior. The Beverly Hills wedding drew Hollywood's upper tier. 2 months later, on September 5th, Byrne was found motionless at his Benedict Canyon home. Beside him lay a hurried note. "To you, my life is a failure. I cannot make you happy." Police were called. The Los Angeles Times and San Francisco Examiner ran late editions that night. But before cameras could document the room, MGM's Rapid Response Unit, under Louis B.U. Mayer, arrived, cleared the scene, retrieved the original note, and within hours issued the official account. Paul Byrne, in despair, had taken his own life. Neighbors in Benedict Canyon told a different story. A woman told the Los Angeles Mirror she saw Harlow leave the house in distress that very evening. Investigative journalist Adela Rogers St. John's wrote on 9/12/1932, "The question isn't what Byrne did, but who was there with him at the last moment." Rumors outran the wires. Some said Harlow concealed a matter involving Byrne's past. Others said she was the last to see him alive. MGM denied everything, but also locked Harlow away in her own residence, isolating her from the press for nearly 3 weeks, which Variety called the most conspicuous silence Hollywood has ever seen. The public began to see Jean Harlow as a goddess with a curse. 2 years later, just as balance seemed to return, her new companion, singer Russ Columbo, died in a strange accident. A display firearm at a friend's home went off. The New York Daily News headlined, "The second man in Harlow's life gone under a cloud." MGM hurried her to Europe for a 3-month rest, dodging the storm. Back on set, Harlow plunged into work as if to outrun herself. Fate seemed to tease her. In 1935, she was linked to the Thin Man star William Powell, who publicly called Harlow the person who makes me believe in destiny. 2 years later, Powell was hospitalized for deep melancholy, and Harlow, while filming Saratoga with Clark Gable, collapsed on set. The crew first assumed exhaustion. Hours later, doctors confirmed a severe infection, and she was moved to Good Samaritan Hospital in Los Angeles. On June 7, 1937, Jean Harlow died at 26. The record listed illness, but the press doubted. Hollywood Citizen News asked, "Why won't MGM release the medical file?" While the Chicago Tribune revealed the studio had used a stand-in to complete Saratoga, masking Harlow's absence with careful angles. The film opened, shattered box office marks, and its final embrace, Gable holding a Jean crafted from trick framing, made the nation weep. Someone wrote in Motion Picture Herald, "Hollywood didn't bury Jean Harlow, they replicated her to sell more tickets." The theories endured with her name. Fans said the platinum was so stark that harsh treatments harmed her. Insiders said Harlow was marked by fame too early, turned into product before she could simply be a person. Louis B. Mayer reportedly said coolly in a meeting, "Jean is our gift to the world. Nothing is wasted." Jean Harlow left at 26, the age when many still don't know who they are. Her passing closed a chapter when beauty was so worshipped it scorched its bearer. But as that somber spotlight faded, Hollywood lit another emblem, not with looks, but with laughter. Charlie Chaplin, a genius obsessed with secret marriages to very young partners. There's a paradox Hollywood has long avoided. The man who made the world laugh left those nearest to him in silence. Charlie Chaplin, the towering screen figure of the 20th century, didn't just create the tramp, he built a personal realm where he held near total control on screen and off. In 1918, as America thrilled to early silent reels, Chaplin married Mildred Harris, who was just 16. The Los Angeles Examiner blared, "Comic master marries school-age bride." It seemed a fairy tale, but months later, columnist Luella Parsons hinted in her entertainment column that the Chaplin marriage is cracking behind closed doors on Sunset Boulevard. He often locked himself in his study, writing until exhaustion, leaving his young wife isolated and ill. When their infant passed away, he did not attend the service, sending only a note, "I cannot face the loss."
The San Francisco Chronicle wrote, "Chaplin makes the world weep for laughter, yet smiles at tears that aren't his."
In 1924, he repeated the pattern, marrying Lita Gray, not yet 17, a supporting player in the gold rush. Because California law barred such a union at that age, he quietly took her to Mexico for the ceremony. The small hotel wedding in Tijuana had just 2 witnesses. Years later, as the relationship cracked, the split became the biggest court spectacle of the silent era. Nearly 1,000 pages of filings included claims the Daily Mirror said were chilling in their portrait of a powerful genius. Chaplin was accused of rigid control, counting every step, restricting friends, and blocking public appearances without permission. When Lita resisted, funds were cut, and she reportedly sold belongings to get by. The court ordered a then-record settlement of over $600,000. Chaplin told Picture Play, "Money is just another prop in my life. Things didn't settle." In 1944, Joan Barry, a young performer from a paused project, filed a claim saying Chaplin was avoiding responsibility for an unborn child. Media uproar followed. The New York Herald Tribune front-paged, "The man who made the world laugh now angers America." FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover, long wary of Chaplin's politics, opened a file. Agents gathered letters, photos, even diary notes. The 1945 hearing aired nationally. Chaplin sat still amid cameras as the country watched. Although testing then wasn't definitive, the court still ordered support to protect public standards. The price of power was isolation. In 1952, as Chaplin sailed from New York to launch Limelight in Europe, the U.S. Justice Department cabled he no longer had re-entry permission. Aboard the SS Queen Elizabeth, watching the city fade, he murmured to his secretary, "I didn't leave America. America left me." It was the last time the world saw Chaplin at his zenith. With his departure, Hollywood stared into the mirror. When icons crack, reporters peel back other kings, foremost among them the man once dubbed the King of Hollywood. Chapter 10. Clark Gable pressured Loretta Young into a hidden pregnancy, then kept the child secret for half a century. If Chaplin embodied an obsession with control, Clark Gable represented quiet power wrapped in charm. He was Rhett Butler in Gone with the Wind, the man who made millions swoon. Yet behind that tilted smile lay secrets MGM would spend heavily to bury. Summer 1933, a crash on Wilshire Boulevard left a Mexican-American man dead at the scene. The next day, the Los Angeles Times ran a short line, "Accident caused by MGM driver." No one mentioned Gable, though witnesses said he sat in the front. 2 weeks later, a studio technician took the blame, then disappeared with a special stipend of $25,000. The case file vanished from city records, and Clark Gable's name never appeared on any report. Investigators later hinted studio chief Louis B. Mayer had private dealings with the sheriff to shield the studio's top earner. That was just the surface. While filming Call of the Wild, 1935, in Washington state, Gable was frequently seen beside co-star Loretta Young, the screen saint, famed for a spotless image. Crew whispered, and Loretta suddenly vanished for months, citing rest. A year later, she returned to Los Angeles with a small girl, introduced as adopted. No paper dared probe, because release contracts for Gable's mutiny on the Bounty included clauses to protect the star's moral image. Only in 1994, in People magazine, did Loretta Young say, "I lived in fear for 60 years. I kept quiet because I knew speaking would end my career overnight." Gable kept shining, America's ideal man. When his wife, Carol Lombard, died in a 1942 flight, sympathy deepened. Gable enlisted, fought in Europe, returned a hero. Yet behind the medals, he sank into drink and solitude in Encino. Neighbors recalled him sitting for hours, staring at Lombard's photo and murmuring, "I work because I fear silence. In silence, I hear everything I've done." As the town swirled with cigar smoke, clinking glasses, and silver light, another man stirred a chill more frightening than any thriller he crafted. 11. Alfred Hitchcock, the director who turned performers' fear into a tool on set. Alfred Hitchcock made audiences hold their breath with every pan, but he also put his performers through long ordeals. Publicly, he was the master of suspense. Privately, he shaped other people's fear into creative material. On the Birds, 1963, newcomer Tippi Hedren, his freshly chosen muse, shot an attack sequence for 5 straight days. Hitchcock had first assured her of safe props. Once cameras rolled, he ordered hundreds of live birds released into a closed room. Crew members recalled Tippi scratched, bleeding, and overwhelmed to the point of collapse. When the scene wrapped, Hitchcock simply said, "Excellent. Genuine feeling is better than acting." Life called the behind-the-scenes stretch one of the harshest method ordeals Hollywood has ever seen. Others described psychological pressure. Kim Novak told Vanity Fair the director once sent a clandestine photo from her dressing room with a note, "Your vulnerability is the beauty I need." Assistant director John Russell wrote that Hitchcock treated leading women like props, puppets in his broad hands. Hitchcock fixated on cool blonde imagery, hiring lighting specialists to give their skin a waxen chill. He stored wigs, shoes, and dresses of leading ladies in a private vault at Pinewood Studios, calling it reference material. At a Beverly Hills party in 1965, asked if he regretted ever hurting anyone, he shrugged, "No, without fear, there is no cinema." The room paused, then laughed, not from humor, but from unease. He lived out his days in Bel Air, surrounded by hundreds of behind-the-scenes photos only he viewed. When he died in 1980, Hollywood honored him as a monument. Yet in BBC and BFI archives, scattered notes remain, the accounts of those who paid the price for his greatness. After Hitchcock, Hollywood's shadows didn't vanish. They changed shape, hiding behind perfect smiles. And the next figure, once seen as a hero, proved how fame can hollow a soul from within. Chapter 12. Kirk Douglas, a steelman icon and the backstage shadows hidden from view. Hollywood in the 1950s loved to build steel templates, square jaws, piercing eyes, footsteps like a marching drumbeat. Kirk Douglas was the perfect face for that formula, from Champion, 1949, to Paths of Glory, 1957, then Spartacus, 1960. But amid the applause at Grauman's Chinese Theater, whispers ran along hotel corridors and audition rooms, where a superstar's influence could seem to warp the air. A Night at the Beverly Hills Hotel in 1955, as the Indian Fighter neared production, included on the guest list a 16-year-old Natalie Wood, newly signed to her first Warner Brothers contract. Years later, in family conversations relayed by Lana Wood on Inside Edition in 2018, the Woods spoke of a night returning home in panic and of a series of calls for answers that fell into silence. No official police report was ever released, but within the industry, the line, "the studio took care of it," became an invisible shield. From there, talk of Douglas's hard edge spread. On The Paths of Glory, set in Bavaria in 1957, assistant directors remembered a unit holding its breath at a single glance. And an October 1960 Los Angeles Times piece quoted Janet Leigh saying he had enough energy to keep a whole crew at attention with his eyes alone. By the Vikings, 1958, stories circulated of contracts threatened with the axe over a look gone out of rhythm, an unwritten law. Even so, Douglas pushed back the political blacklists, produced Spartacus, and put Dalton Trumbo's name on the credits, burnishing his image as righteous. That parallel of spotlight and shadow unnerved people. Where honor was praised, a chilling habit seemed to take root. When he died in 2020 at 103, the press hailed Douglas as the last hero of the Golden Age. But among the wreaths at Forest Lawn lingered the smoke of stories stitched shut for decades. From the silhouette of a steel man, the thread leads straight to a screen queen who ran her home like a fortress under her command. 13. Joan Crawford, screen's model mother and the real hell. Inside the Brentwood house. Joan Crawford climbed the class ladder in pointed heels and iron will. From nightclub dancer to MGM star, from Our Dancing Daughters to the Oscar for Mildred Pierce, 1946, she turned every red carpet walk into a march. But in the Brentwood mansion, so exacting the table linens were straight as a ruler, fear was packaged as daily routine. Christina Crawford's 1978 memoir, Mommy Dearest, opened that door. Closets as cells, toothbrushes used to scrub floors, dinner withheld as ritual punishment, late-night line readings before the mirror on command, the slogan, "Celebrities aren't allowed to be wrong," hanging in the air. When the book exploded, Time and Vanity Fair both asked icon or tyrant. Housekeepers, drivers, and assistants confirmed a harsh discipline that lasted years. Image-wise, Crawford kept such polish she was willing to use harsh chemicals to strip skin, shave her real hair, and wear wigs fitted to a camera-perfect skull ratio. She enrolled her children in acting coaching early, turning childhood into an endless audition. In the flashes, that smile blazed like studio lamps, but behind the door, the remaining sound was children whispering as they learned to align hangers before spelling the word freedom. Crawford's story shows that in Hollywood, fear can be velvet-wrapped, labeled perfect, and sold like a luxury good. From that disciplined citadel, the power line traces to the haunted signature of the man behind the curtain at RKO. 14. Howard Hughes, the reclusive magnate who ruled Hollywood with fear and surveillance. Howard Hughes stood between runway and cutting room, record-setting pilot, producer of Hell's Angels, 1930, and The Outlaw, 1943, then the force steering RKO Pictures in the late 1940s. From then on, special contracts began to appear. Vanity Fair has often described his self-engineered routine. Private residences staffed by his own people, logs of every call, destination, and sleep pattern, like a technical file on a living subject. At the Los Angeles Times offices, a former secretary recalled passing documents through a door slot, Hughes in robe and gloves, face unseen, while everyone understood they were inside an unnamed surveillance system. Between 1950 and 1955, more than 700 employees left RKO in waves of layoffs. dozens of scenes were trimmed by tickets marked non-compliant. The Gower Street cutting rooms were as cold as a freezer because no one could predict how today's standard might shift tomorrow. Offset, Hughes hid in sealed hotel floors at the Desert Inn in Las Vegas, blinds drawn, speaking by house phone, commanding by one-way orders. When he died in 1976, police logs noted thick notebooks cataloging staff habits, fingernails grown to odd lengths, and piles of unmanaged medicine. Time called him the loneliest king in America. The chill didn't come from solitude, but from choosing isolation to control everything with an invisible cord called fear. From the RKO office where signatures replaced words, the story turns back to the living room of America's warmest home, where holiday songs cooled a house at daybreak. 15. Bing Crosby, the father who used discipline as a tool to punish his own children. Each holiday season, White Christmas plays like a blessing card. But for Bing Crosby's children, that song meant a day starting at 5 a.m., mic on, tape rolling, every mistake rewound until minds went numb. In his 1983 memoir, Going My Own Way, Gary Crosby describes sugar-coated iron discipline. Speaking at dinner meant kneeling as punishment. A wrong posture meant hours in the yard, while their father read the paper quietly, as if crying were mere background noise. In 1984, on ABC's Nightline, brothers Dennis and Philip confirmed the Holmby Hills mansion rarely heard children's laughter because fear was the only language. A housemaid told the Washington Post Crosby rarely raised his voice. He just looked, and the look served as sentence. The model dad image collapsed within weeks of the book's release. The public reeled at the paradox, a gentle voice paired with a chill that turned the family kitchen into drill practice. When discipline is the only language, a child learns to pronounce fear before the alphabet. That punch to the Christmas postcard made Hollywood reopen early century pages, seeking the source of sealed scandals, where one hotel party swept a silent-era comedy throne into the abyss. The next chapter starts with a name the town once tried not to say. 16. Lana Turner, beauty icon, entangled in the mystery of a lover's fatal stabbing. MGM's lights seemed designed to cradle Lana Turner's face. Since The Postman Always Rings Twice, 1946, her name defined screen magnetism. But between silk and champagne, Turner's private life coiled with romances more suspenseful than scripts. Reporters whispered she seldom chose gentle men, that being pushed to the edge made her feel truly loved. Then came Johnny Stompanato like a curse. Stompanato, close to Mickey Cohen, brought gold watches etched with names, heavy diamond rings, and bouquets sent to set as territorial messages. Within weeks, friends noticed Turner arriving at work with heavy makeup, veiling faint marks around her wrists. The director of Another Time, Another Place told the Los Angeles Herald that Turner needed no prompting for crying scenes. Tears seemed waiting at the corners of her eyes. On the night of April 4, 1958, at the Beverly Hills home, neighbors heard a scream tear the dark. Police arrived to find Stompanato motionless in the bedroom. 14-year-old Cheryl Crane stood by a table, hands shaking from holding a fruit knife. Statements said she'd stepped in to defend her mother against immediate threats. The inquest quickly ruled justifiable defense. The case closed with a terse local broadcast, but the public's doubts did not. Variety, under Mike Connolly, wrote the statements felt too polished. Columns in the New York Herald Tribune and Los Angeles Times asked whether Hollywood's protective curtain had been drawn over the scene. Some rumors said Turner herself held the knife. An A-list director turned red and declined CBS's camera. Opinion split, half suspicion, half pity, and photos of Turner leaving the house in dark glasses became a cold icon of a beauty, capable of shifting the media tide. In 1959, Turner returned in imitation of life. America wept in theaters. Time called it a public absolution in tears. But in Universal's cutting rooms, insiders knew Hollywood carried an invisible solvent for stains. And those are the dark secrets Burt Lancaster left in a diary that sent shockwaves through Hollywood, a place where glitter is a curtain over souls who traded conscience for fame. Each name on that list is a shard of truth the film industry has tried to hide, yet time finds a way to expose everything. What about you? Which of them do you think is the most frightening, the truly cruel one, or a victim of their own fame? Share your thoughts below and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next mystery.